Welcome back to the Unholier podcast. I'm your host, Jenny Smith. This episode is a special one because tomorrow marks the 1-year anniversary of the Unholier podcast. And wow, what a year it has been. I am joined today by one of my besties, David Keck, who is also in the podcasting space. And together we sit down to do a real unfiltered year in review. We're talking about the highs, the lows, the lessons learned, the ones that hurt us, the ones that healed us, and the moments that we completely were blindsided by. This past year brought growth, new friendships, unexpected opportunities, and also some real challenges, including navigating conflict, public drama, and what it was like when my previous co-host walked away and chaos followed. We don't sensationalize it, but we do talk honestly about how it impacted us. It impacted the podcast and what it taught us about boundaries, resilience, and trusting ourselves. This episode is reflective, raw, and ultimately hopeful. If you've ever outgrown something that you once built with somebody else, or you had to keep going when things got messy, this one is for you. My bestie, David, we've been through some shit this year. And when I started thinking about the date March 4th, which is the date that Unholier first aired, it's when this airs, it's going to be the day before, so March 3rd. And we've been through a lot in the year. And I started talking to my husband, Smitty, and saying, I cannot believe what has transpired in the 12 months that I have been doing this podcast. And initially, I had considered doing this as a solo episode. And then I thought, I can't do that because I have to have you on because you were right there by my side through the whole thing. You were in the shit with me along with Smitty, but I don't know that he would be able to handle this conversation. I think I'm spicy enough for the both of us. It's fine. So I thought maybe we could do like a little look back and review what the last 12 months has brought with the Unholier podcast.
Yeah, I am so glad that you decided to have me on with you. I would have loved and respected. I do think that you need to have some solo episodes. I think those would be great. I just don't know that this is the one to do it because we've been through it all together, trying to figure out our way. And it all happened so fast too. Like you and I went into this as strangers. I interviewed you, fell in love with you. It was like, hey, business prop, and you're like, hey, I'm down, and then, but even though we have went through some shit, we've also through some really good times.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's maybe one thing that people might not know is that when you had me on to be on your podcast to tell my story, and then afterwards it was like, what do you think of having your own podcast? And then you just made my episode one of the first episodes of Unholier, and it sort of took off from there. One thing I will say is I let's talk about that first episode because there was some backlash that I received for that episode. Of course, I'm talking about my upbringing and I'm talking about my arranged marriage and I'm talking about my abusive marriage and what it was like to co-parent with a straight up narcissist and all of these things. So there was some backlash, obviously, from my ex through my daughter. But then there were also comments about how people thought that I was disrespectful to my father. And he is now deceased, and that I shouldn't be speaking about him in the way that I was speaking about him. And I just want to say, like, first of all, I was never disrespectful in the way that I spoke of him. I was only speaking facts, like what happened to me and what was his role within that part of my life. And I will tell you that ultimately, when I got divorced and I got out of the church and then I met my current husband Ryan, he was very much against it at the beginning. And then the two of them ended up being very close in the end. And so I think that in essence, my dad was also in the cult. He would never call it a cult. Like he would
Sure.
never consider it a cult, but it's just like I try to tell people if he was raised in a Muslim home, he would have been a Muslim, right? If he
Right.
was raised in an atheist home, he'd probably be an atheist. So he is a product of his upbringing and the
Right.
environment that he was put in. And our family just happened to be entrenched in the independent fundamental Baptist cult. And so out churned the pastors, evangelists, the missionaries, that's just a product of the environment and the way that he was raised. And so I do give him grace for that because there was a time where I'm the one that obeyed what he said. So it's also on me too. Whereas I could have been like, ultimately, I'm not going to listen to what you're telling me and I'm going to marry this other person. But because I was entrenched in that mindset and that brainwashing of the cult, I didn't know otherwise. I didn't know there were other options. And so I had to also give myself grace once I got out to say, it wasn't necessarily your fault because that's all you knew. And you know what I'm saying? Like, so when people say things like, you were disrespectful, you shouldn't have been talking about your dad that way, I say it with also giving him grace because that's all he knew. So,
I would love to give you some of my thoughts with that.
yeah.
So I I know that in my Southern Christian upbringing, we've always been taught that we don't talk ill of the dead.
Mhm.
I hate that saying.
Mhm.
Just because someone has passed away does not wash away everything but the good memories. You only spoke of sometimes the truth is ugly, right?
Mhm. Right.
That does not mean you're disrespecting your father. That does not mean that you do not have a loving, respectful relationship with your father. It's just sometimes there's ugly in the truth and you are speaking the truth. And I think that because I feel like in the first episode I even asked you because I went into it knowing very, very little about you.
Mhm.
And so I had even asked you, I believe, in that episode, like, what is your relationship with your father now? And I was very surprised that you had such a loving relationship with him up until he passed away, what, a year or two ago?
Mhm.
At
Yeah, a
at
couple
this
years
point?
ago.
Yeah, at
Mhm.
this point. And and so but even when I first went into it thinking that you didn't talk to your family, whether it was because the cult wouldn't allow it or because of your decision,
Mm.
either way, I thought that you didn't talk to your family. And when I found out that you did, there was so much strength in that, I thought. And so I think what I wonder is there was a certain group of people that were attacking you as far as what you said about your father. And it was almost the father being the scapegoat of them being mad at you for the fact that you're bringing light to their beliefs and their religion. It was never really about you and the disrespect that you had, quote unquote disrespect that you had to your father. Like I don't believe that they truly meant that. I think that was their scapegoat into trying to make it that you're calling them out in a religion that maybe they're still in or that they
Mhm.
follow or that they haven't come to terms with and it was triggering to them, and I think that's the point of the platforms that we have. We have to trigger people. There has to be a shock factor.
Mhm.
Sometimes people have to be shamed. We have to say, "You were in a cult. You were brainwashed." No one wants to hear that. We all wanna think that we're stronger and better than that, and how come I wasn't brainwashed and you were? What makes or not you, but the cult you.
Yeah.
Like, what makes me stronger than them? And I don't think that that's the case, and I think that a lot of the responses and feedback that you were getting was based more around the religion versus your father.
Mhm.
Does that make
It
sense at all?
it totally makes sense. Absolutely, and I 100% agree with you. I think that a lot of times when people have their paradigms challenged, it makes them uncomfortable. And so, it's kind of like having the same parent, but one child has a totally different perspective of how mom treated me versus how mom treated you. And one child may say she was a good mom, and the other child may say she was a terrible mother. So it's kind of like, what was their perspective of him? Well, my perspective was he was my dad, but he was also my pastor. And so I didn't feel like there were any options for me. It was, this is what you're going to do. This is what we feel God's will is for your life, and you're going to do it or face the consequences, i.e., God's judgment, whatever that would entail. I mean, and for the longest time looking back, I'm like, I should have eloped. I should have run away. I should have all these things. But, at the end of the day, I did what I felt was right in that moment. And I was very young. I mean, 20, 21 years old. I mean, that's still very young. And I had to really go through this point where I had to forgive myself, honestly. I
Mhm.
had to forgive my dad, but I had to forgive myself. 'Cause I did have those moments, like, what if I would've ran out of that bathroom with my best friend Miranda and gotten in the car and drove away? What would my life have looked like? How would it have changed? Would I have ever met my husband Ryan? Would I ever have my kids? Would I ever, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Do you ever think that we
so
live in a world where when there's those big change, like those, because I think there's, I think daily we're put in a situation where we can go left or right at a fork in a road, right? But there are
yeah.
times that you're probably going to still end up on the same path. But now when someone's in the dressing room or bathroom with you and you're wearing your fucking wedding dress and there's 500 plus thousand, whatever it was, people waiting and the music has started and they're like, bitch, run, we can get in the car and go, and you didn't. Do you think there's a world? Oh, because you and I talk about some conspiracy theories, right? Do you think there's a world where we in another life go back and we take the other route where maybe there's a world that you'll relive where you do go down, where you do run to the car and run away with your best friend and start over? Like,
Oh, it's just so interesting to think about, isn't it? It's like, so when I had the psychic medium Kirsten on, and she talks about how we have soul contracts and that we actually write our story because there are certain lessons that we are here to learn while we're here in this life. And she does believe that you go through multiple lives. And so this, that was a hard pill to swallow because I'm like, so I actually did choose that for myself. That was something that really kinda took me back because 'cause I'm like, all these things that I had to go through. She's like, "Yeah, but look at your life now, like, looking back where you're at now versus where you were then, you were in it, so you couldn't see. Now that you're out of it, all the things that you have been able to do since then and what you're doing with the podcast and helping other people and being a voice for survivors is so beautiful." And I'm like, yeah, okay. Like that, it doesn't make it, I don't want to say it makes it worth it because I feel like that is such a cliche. I I will say it makes it more palatable, if that makes sense, like easier to
yeah.
swallow. When I think about, well, if I had this in my contract and I agreed to it before I came here, then okay, if there was like a bigger reason for this happening to me, then okay, I can accept that.
Well, that's why I say that the reason the reason I want to start the podcast, the reason I became so vocal and loud about my big T, and if you want to
Mhm.
hear that episode, you can find it on Surviving Ish.
Yeah.
But just a little shameless plug there. But I would never have chosen this path,
Yeah.
right? But I wanted to do the podcast. I wanted to be loud. I wanted to show how I survived and the things that helped me and hopefully learn new things along the way that will continue to help me and help other people. And it makes it less in vain, right?
Mhm.
It like you said, you use the word palatable. And I think what is also very important, Jenny, to remember is even though you are not completely in the cult, you were not so brainwashed, there was still things, we've even had the conversation off record where sometimes like even your husband will ask you, like,
Mm-hmm.
is this cult Jenny talking? Is this religious, before deconstruction Jenny talking? Or is this Jenny now talking? And then you take a step back and you're like, oh, And so there's
Mm-hmm.
still like those things that we're just naturally groomed into, whether it's a cult or not. There are things that my parents taught me, just being in a household or that a church taught me. Like one of the things that we talk about a lot is I was told in church that if I kiss a boy at age 12, I'm going to die of AIDS. Not how you get AIDS. Mm.
Right.
But I fought. Like I went home thinking. And sometimes, like, there are times that, like, what, like I'm recently single. Well, not recently, I guess, but I'm recently thinking about putting myself back out into the dating world. And I've even had the thought of like, well, what happens when I kiss someone? And then I was like, wait, what does that mean? And I went back to I still have that. There's still this seed inside of me that's like, beware, you kiss a boy, you get AIDS. You've made it this long in your life without AIDS. You're gonna kiss one boy and get AIDS. It's not how you fucking get AIDS.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's some things that I think that don't get deconstructed or that is still embedded in us that it takes certain kind of questions and certain moments for us to be like, oh shit. Like that's why I'm glad you have Schmitty that or Ryan, I call him Smitty, but your
Yeah.
husband Ryan,
Yeah.
to kind of point those things out. And
Yeah.
and so you had mentioned earlier, allowing grace and giving grace. And I hope and I think that you do, but those are the times that you still deserve it.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say, because I know that I don't want us to stay on this topic more than we should, but we are planning on doing a part two because so many other things have come to light that you've processed that you've thought about after doing this unholier and having different conversations for a year now. And so a lot of these things we'll probably dive deeper into. So I would love to say to the listener, oh, I've kind of just hijacked your show. Sorry. But I'd love
It's
to say to
good.
the
No, I love
listener,
it. I love
yeah, I'd love
it.
to say to the listener, if y'all have any questions for Jenny, we're preparing her part two. So if you haven't listened to her part one, listen to it. It's really good. It's the number one episode on her platform still a year later. And if you have any questions, send it in. And I do have a question for you, Jenny. It's kind of a two-part question, and we can always put a pin in it. This is where we need to assist. Oh, luckily we record because this because we need to remember because I don't know if you want to put a pin in this question
Okay.
and us discuss in the part two episode, and this is a cliffhanger or what. But you had mentioned, and this is kind of backtracking to your father, and you had mentioned that he was your preacher and he was your father. And so my question to you is take the preacher aside.
Mm-hmm.
Was he a good father or did he become a good father? Has he always been a good father? Like, where do you put him in the father category? Did he get better?
That's
And
a
again,
really
that could
good
be something we
question.
put a pin in.
That's a
Um,
very good question.
yeah. And then the part two of that is preacher. Was he a good preacher? Did he become a better preacher? Did he learn things along the way? Because he didn't like to use the word cult. But surely having a daughter that remained in his life and is close that broke away from it still had to give him questions. Like,
Sure.
am I doing things the right way? Did you breaking away change his thought pattern in a way that maybe he didn't admit to it, but there was just some kind of change. And so maybe that's something you want to think about and us discuss in your part two. But I would love to be able to dig deeper into that.
Mm-hmm. I love both of those questions. Yeah, let's save those for the part two because if anyone's listening and they're interested in my answer, you're definitely going to want to tune into the part two when we do it. So,
Yes, I love a good
uh,
cliffhanger.
yes. So, when I first started the Unholier podcast, of course, I would not have been able to do any of this without you because you have literally done the whole thing. You produce, you edit, you have guided me, you have done all of the things, shown me the way. I am you are like my sensei and I'm your grasshopper. So,
Um, well, we learned together, honestly. Like, but thank
so,
you.
I guess it's one of those fake it till you make it things, right?
Absolutely.
But when the podcast first started, I had a co-host. I secretly wanted to have my own podcast because I had just quit a previous podcast that I was on with another girl. It wasn't my podcast. I was her co-host and we didn't see eye to eye about some things. So I bounced out and then right around that time was when I interviewed with you for my episode and then went from there. And so I always knew I would have my own podcast, but I didn't know how it would come to fruition. And so when you told me that I would be having a co-host, I was secretly disappointed and sad because I'm like, I just went through this. I don't want to have a co-host. It's just if I have a thought and I want to say something to a guest, I feel like I have to censor myself. I feel like I have to just wait for a million seconds to be able to put my 2 cents into a conversation. And if there's more than just me and the guest, it can sometimes get a little chaotic.
Sure.
And so that was like my biggest fear. And I didn't know this person. You knew this person. Can we say her name?
Yeah. I mean, it's public
Okay.
record. So, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, basically, if y'all are just finding the Unholier podcast, you can go to season 1 if you want and kinda just see what I'm talking about. But my previous co-host, Susie, was on with me. I actually have never met Susie in my entire life. She used to be on a podcast with David, and so they knew each other through his podcast, and then somehow she ended up on the Unholier podcast. But so what was that for like maybe from March till July is when she quit. And it was interesting. So her story I was intrigued by because I'm very into like documentaries and true crime and like murder mysteries and if you ask me, "Have you seen this documentary on Netflix?" and it has to do with, like, a murder or something, I probably have seen it, just because I'm always wondering, like, what it gets into people's minds to do this kinda
Uh,
thing, right? And I like to see from the other perspectives too of, like, the investigators and the detectives and the other family members and what everybody was going through to solve these mysteries, and so her story was very intriguing to me because at the time, I had spent quite a bit of time on the other podcast interviewing people from the Rebecca home. And if you're not familiar with the Rebecca home, you can do a quick Google search. If you look up the Rebecca home in Corpus Christi, Texas, or the Lester Roloff Enterprises or Lester Roloff himself, he was one of the first people who started like the troubled teen industry. On this previous podcast, we had interviewed several of the women that went through the Rebecca home as teenagers. They're now grown adults, but they're still living in this trauma day in and day out. And I was horrified by this. I mean, it is legit a true crime story. And so Susie comes into the picture, ends up being my co host, and learning about her story, or should I say, supposed story, it was extremely elaborate. So, anything that I had heard about the Rebecca home or any of the Lester Roloff homes paled in comparison to Susie's story. It was like if you took Tiger King and amplified the insanity and the craziness by 10, that was Susie's narrative that she was telling everybody of her father being essentially an axe murderer, saying that he would take these girls from various homes in these troubled teen homes within the Lester Roloff enterprises, and he would take them around the country. He would essay them, and then he would kill them, bury them in various locations. And her siblings were all part of this whole tour killing spree that they went on. And so this whole thing was not only intriguing, but it was interesting. I thought, well, this is something that should be in a documentary. Like, if there was ever a documentary, it should be this story. Well, long story short about that, in July, she had contacted the police department, I think FBI in Washington, because she had tipped them off to say there is an unsolved murder case in this town, and I know where the body's buried because my dad did the deed. And so it was a house that they supposedly used to live in, and now it's owned by somebody else. And the end of it basically was that this whole team of law enforcement and investigators went out there to exhume a supposed body that was buried in this basement of this house that they used to live in, and nothing was found. And so she, in July, was having a mental meltdown at this point and was very upset that nobody was taking her seriously. And this is not the first time that that's happened, because I guess the year before there was also another, you know,
Cadaver
thing.
dog,
Yes, cadaver dogs, and there was
bodies being dug up, and there was
but
not
there was
ever any.
nothing. Yeah, there was nothing, 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 nothing. And her brother had made a statement on social media basically calling her out, saying everything that she's saying about our father is absolute false, and that he wanted nothing to do with her. The whole family has written her off as crazy and all of this. Well, here she is, my co-host. And I'm like,
Well, and if you
okay,
remember too, before I really, because I on Surviving It, well, at the time it was called
yeah.
Surviving Podcast.
Or the
Excuse me.
process of healing.
Well, no, it was even before that.
Oh,
Is when
okay.
is when I released the mini series of the Rebecca
Rebecca
girls,
girls. Yeah.
and she, her story was on it. Well, before it was released, her brother caught wind of it and contacted me, found my information and contacted me, and
Yeah.
was, he was very polite to me. He was not threatening, but pretty much saying that I have facts to debunk everything. I did not get any of those facts. We had one conversation and that was it. But he went as far as like contacting me, and I was 6 months into podcasting. Like the Rebecca Girls miniseries is what really put me on the map. It's how I got recognized by Paris Hilton and, and on Times Square and stuff. So before that, I was a nobody. And the reason I say that is for him to want to contact me, who had like 5 listeners, one of those being myself and my mom, what would be the point of wasting your time if
Yeah.
it was not, if he did not believe his truth? And with that being said, I do want to say you and I are always on the side of believing victims, period. And so that's how sometimes we get caught up in some of these situations that we've been in the past year, is putting so much belief into victims that where maybe we're finding that not everything is able to be backed.
Yeah. And that's a really good point. But I also remember her saying her dad faked his death and faked his death twice. I'm not sure how you do that, but to get insurance money, life insurance money, and her mom was in on it the whole time. And it was just this whole very elaborate story. And I bought it hook, line, and sinker.
Same.
And and then after the whole meltdown in July with her narrative crumbling, because this was the second attempt, at least that we know of, by the police and cadaver dogs and FBI and all that, to exhume a body that didn't exist there. She was very upset and having a meltdown. And I started noticing that when her and I would be on with survivors and survivors would be telling her their stories, she was getting uncomfortable and she would fidget around, wouldn't pay attention, be very like uncomfortable. And so you and I had a conversation with her that, hey, maybe just come on episodes that are like the lighthearted episodes where we just pick a fun topic and we just have something lighthearted, and any survivor stories, you could do those with me or I could do them by myself with a survivor, because we
Right.
noticed that she needed a minute to
Yeah.
process
And
whatever was going on.
yeah, and I wanna say, to the listeners that we're not shaming that, right? We're not
Right.
shaming people's triggers. We're not shaming that, but we also have to be very mindful when we have someone on that is sharing their stories, we're responsible for our triggers. If you and I, we know our triggers, we know how to tap our third eye and count and breathe and do all those grounding techniques even in real time. If we
Mhm.
had a third person on right now and they were opening up and sharing their story and I turned away and started typing and or if I just kept my head down or if I
Which are
were
all examples of what was going on.
exactly, then not only do we need to take Susie and her triggers into thought, uh, but first and foremost, it is our responsibility as the host to make sure that the person that is trusting our platform, who could possibly, in most cases that are strangers to us, that are trusting our platform, that we give them the utmost respect, that we see them and we hear them. And it simply wasn't happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of these survivors are telling their stories for their first time on
Yeah.
our platform. So we want to be respectful of that for sure, because that can be a very vulnerable place.
Yeah.
Within that conversation, she was very relieved and was like, yes, definitely. I definitely want to take a break from survivor stories. I still want to be on to the episodes to do like the fun episodes with you guys on both of the podcasts. And so that's what we all agreed to, that she was going to take more of like an administrative like role, where she was going to be doing more marketing and setting up podcast guests and setting up times for David and I to also be guests on other podcasts. And so that was a role that she was going to start really diving into.
And she was really good at that role,
Mhm.
agreed on that role, and we needed that role.
Mhm.
We just didn't have the bandwidth for it. So it's not that you and I forced her into anything. We can because I still have the copy of the Zoom meeting that we had with her on this. The sigh of relief that she
Mhm.
had, where you and I walked away knowing that we did something great
Mhm.
and for not only for our friend at the time, but for our business partner, for and for someone's mental health and for
Mhm.
our guest that we were having on the show. We were able
Mhm.
to we found a way to put all of those things as number 1.
So, what ultimately ended up happening was she quit. There was a little bit of a meltdown moment where she was doing these promos for David and I to go on other people's podcasts. And we were like, yeah, these are great, you know? And then the next thing I know, she's doing a promo that has her and I both. And it was like a promo to survivors, like, hey, do you have a story about this, that, and the other thing? Would you like to come on Holier and talk with Jenny and Susie? Blah, blah, blah. And I said, wait a minute. I thought she was taking a break from survivor stories. And then that turned into, we want her to quit the podcast. And it accelerated from there. And then she went public with that and was like, David and Jenny kicked me off the podcast. They think they can do it alone. Well, I'm going to show them. And you would think that that would have been the end of it. But that's just, she was just ramping up at that point. It was like whatever mental space she was in, she was going to keep that like vortex going and suck us into it. And so there was attorneys involved, there were threats made, there were other people, other survivors that were pulled into it. There was so much flippin' drama that I was like, is this even worth it? Like, what am I doing? Like, I'm not even a year into this podcast and I'm having to hire an attorney for some crazy lady that I've never even met, who lives in Texas, who thinks her dad's a freaking axe murderer, who all this stuff. I'm like, what is my life right now? Like, what did I get myself into? And
And that was one of the hard I mean, this whole thing was frustrating, on different levels for each of us together, some bigger than others at times, right? But one of the most heartbreaking things is when I was afraid that I was losing you, that the podcasting world was losing you, that the survivors want to lose you because you were a foot on banana peel of slipping out of this and
Oh,
and and
100%.
and walking away. And I couldn't have blamed you, but I kept hoping and hoping. And I almost said praying and I almost said it again, but sending things to the universe because I don't necessarily pray, but that without me guilting you into staying, that you would find a way to want to stay because
Yeah.
what you are doing is great. And I'm glad that we are fast forward to obviously you've stayed, right?
Yeah,
but but
obviously
but
I
in those
stayed. Yeah.
moments I was like, oh my God, like she does not need to go anywhere. And sorry for the tangent, but I just wanted to let you know
No.
that I love you.
I love you too, David. No,
Midway
seriously
through, just
though.
letting you know I love you.
Yeah, it was crazy. And so that sort of the it's like, do you ever watch those tornado videos where the tornado starts out just this small little spiral and then ends up like a freaking 2.5 mile wide insanity? You don't even see the tornado because it's just this wall of shit that's going to destroy everything in its path. I felt like that was like what was happening. And it was like, it was almost like every day there was a different load of bullshit that I had to
And
deal
and
with, that
not
you had to
not
deal with. It was, like, never ending.
okay, and I'm about to talk cars. Not like a little S10 full of load dumped in your
No.
yard. It was like dumpster size load
Oh,
dumped
yeah.
in the yard.
Yeah.
And in your defense, Jenny, and one thing that I kept reminding myself because I never wanted to persuade you, guilt you, or try to talk you into staying, but in your defense, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over again, expecting a different outcome. Well, you had just left an unhealthy situation from a different podcast that broke the podcasting ice world for you, but didn't have that best of an outcome. Then you
Mhm.
got into this, and within months, it's like WTF. And so I could see from your point of view of you being like, okay, well, if I stay, then I'm the one that's fucking crazy because I'm repeating the same shit, putting myself in the same, not that you're repeating things as doing any as in you do anything bad, but you're involving yourself in a podcast world where every few months is disastrous and you're thinking, well, next month will be different, which is the definition of insanity, right? So I could see
Yeah.
how like you and even Smitty or Ryan could have been like, girl, get out while you
Yeah.
can. Yeah.
And I mean, it caused a lot of issues even in our relationship and within our family. Like, it almost broke me because what happened next was Susie filed a false police report against me saying, I don't even know, can I even say the word? Can I even say like I mean, it's public record, but I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that we're used to going live on TikTok, and so we try to be filtered, but here we don't have to be.
Okay. Essentially saying that I was organizing a mass shooting at the Rebecca home, that I was trying to organize this whole thing, these meetups where all these survivors from these different troubled teen homes were going to all meet. And we were basically going to start violence at the Rebecca home in Corpus Christi, Texas. Now, I would like the record to state Susie was the one that came up with the idea to have a meetup at the Rebecca home because she is still thought of at the Rebecca home and at the People's Baptist Church as still being in the IFB cult. They still think she is in that cult. So she was saying, I would be able to get us all in. I would, we'd have to dress the part, we'd have to act the part. Now, somebody within the time where we were talking about organizing a meetup had said, I don't know if it's safe for us to go in or whatever. And she had said, well, yeah, I mean, they're going to be packing, they're going to have guns on them. They will be armed.
They
Like
as in the
these,
organization, not they as in
yes.
you all.
Correct. And so the two other guys that were on this organization call where we were talking about the preliminary idea, and trying to figure out how we were going to go about just going. And my thought was this would be a really great healing opportunity for the people who were hurt by the Lester roll-off enterprises and the troubled teen industry and the IFB and this organization to go back to essentially the Mecca, the starting point of where it all came about, to be able to reclaim their voice, to have a peaceful protest, to be able to say, I'm here where it all started and I've reclaimed my power. And that was my thought on why I wanted the meetup to happen. I thought this would be a great opportunity for these survivors. I could go and be support for them. It would be great because I had several of them on the podcast as guests telling their stories. And so one of the guys on the call was like, "Oh, well, if they have guns, then we have our CPLs, we'll just bring our guns too." And somehow months later, after Susie got mad and quit the podcast, I became the one that was organizing a mass shooting at the Rebecca home and filed a police report. I found out from another survivor who called me and alerted me that Susie and my previous the person that I was on another podcast with were basically had kind of teamed up and were saying all this shit about me. And so Susie took it upon herself to file a false police report. And I literally, it almost broke me. I'm like, what is happening? Like, what kind of freaking crazy people you are? To me, that says you literally want me in prison for what? What did I do to you? What did I ever do to you, to your family? I never took money from you. I never said anything bad about you. I've never hurt you in any way. You quit the podcast and you want to throw me in prison? You're making up a false narrative. So then it was all these things started adding up. It started adding up like, okay, if she's making this false police report about me, then everything she said about her dad, I literally was like, all of it's fucking bullshit. I don't care. It's bullshit. I don't believe it. Her brother's speaking out like nothing's ever happened. The FBI, the police have never uncovered anything. They've never found any evidence. Like, she's full of it. And it was like, honestly, it was like God, the universe, whatever, was pruning her from my life, was like, you need to get as far away from this crazy bitch as possible. And you can keep that in. I don't care. Because somebody that wants to destroy somebody else's life and is that you're freaking evil. I don't care what anyone says. You're evil. I wouldn't even do that to my ex-husband. And he's not a good person. He's done some terrible things, and not just to me, but to my daughter and to other people. And I would never do that. I would never file a false police report against somebody and try and get them SWAT coming to their house. This is like what I'm picturing. SWAT's going to come to my house. Like, I'm going to get hauled off to jail and all this stuff is going to happen. And then what? What's going to happen to my family, my kids, like all these things? None of that was taken into consideration.
Well, and
And
what is so terrifying that you and I don't know if we Googled it or researched it together, or if I did it separately or what, but statistics show that in a police report like this, the outcome usually results in death. Meaning,
explain why.
meaning if they came, if the FBI, whatever, came to your house and surrounded your house, usually it ends up with them taking down a person. It could have been you. It could have been, you would have been the target, but you have a house full of kids. You have a husband. This was very dangerous.
Mhm.
Very fucking dangerous. And we might say that the things I'm saying right now is dramatic, but that's what stats and proof shows.
Mhm.
That is the situation that someone put you in, is for us to have to think that is a possibility to your life and your home. The fuck? Like, you
I
have
know.
zero criminal record, and now all of a sudden
Exactly.
FBI might show up at your house thinking you're putting together a mass shooting for a church. Are you fucking kidding me? Like,
Yeah.
I don't, and I'm not asking to know. It's none of my business. It truly doesn't matter. But I don't even know what your thoughts are on gun rights. I don't know if you own a gun or have ever even shot a gun. And the point of me saying that is, even if someone in the group had mentioned, well, we do have the license to carry, and so if we're going to do a peaceful protest by the amendment, we are able to at least have this for protection if we need it. And that was kind of, I wasn't a part of the conversation, but it is from what I know about the people that said it, it's almost a way of saying, this will be there only if we need it. And it was just to reassure people that we will have ways to protest peacefully and protect ourselves if needed. And that would be a worst case scenario, leading to somehow you organized it when the people that we've talked to that was a part of this meeting, you were kind of sitting back observing the conversation because maybe you have a license to carry, I don't know, but you didn't volunteer to bring a gun. You didn't, you know what I mean?
Right.
You never did any of that according to the witnesses that were part of the conversation. So
Mhm.
of course I believe that.
Mhm.
And so sorry for the tangent, but the point is that this is 0 to 800, and it not only put your life in jeopardy, but your children's life in jeopardy, all for a
Yeah.
podcast that had 0 gross profit.
Yeah, and I'm just like, what is the point? What is the reason?
Why?
And, for somebody to have that much hatred towards me, there's something wrong.
Yeah.
Like, the person that I dislike most in this world, which I've been very vocal about, my ex-husband, I'm not gonna do something like that, even, like, to him. Like,
Well,
I
our
just
brains don't
don't.
even work that way. I would
It's
never
not.
even think
No,
to do that.
exactly. This was a really, really it was a hard year. So that happened. That happened in September. And there were 2 other people that were mentioned in the police report. And both of those people have come forward and said that absolutely what Susie stated in the police report is not true. They both said, like, if you need any help proving this or get you need a statement or anything, we'd be happy to provide it.
Well, and
Well,
and they have, right? Well, at
yes,
least, yeah, they have.
they both
They
have.
both have given
And
a statement.
yeah, they both have given a statement. And so the police never investigated it because they knew that it was
Bullshit.
bullshit.
Yeah.
And in so many words, when we talk to the police department there, they actually, without saying, but in a roundabout way, were like, this is sort of a pattern with this individual. So, yeah, all anyone has to do, like, if they're on a police department, is just look up how many times Susie has made police reports on people, including her own dad or her own brother and random people. The level of drama that I just never even fathom would be involved in starting a podcast, but
All
I
for
think
helping people. Like,
all for
we're trying to
helping
help people,
survivors. Yeah. And
and
I think too though that y and honestly, my eyes have been really open since I talked to Kirsten, and I keep saying Kirsten because really her episode was so eye-opening
it's
for
a
me.
good episode.
Yeah, it really was. And so when we talk about dark entities, that shit's real. And so I honestly think that when you're trying to shed light on abuse and you're trying to expose the atrocities that happen in places where people should feel safe and loved, like a church, and you're trying to expose that, which is what I'm trying to do, and I'm trying to elevate survivors and give them a safe platform, it's coming with the territory. You're gonna have dark entities that are gonna try and stop you, and I just chuck it up to that, honestly.
100% I agree with that. Like, even while editing Kirsten's episode, I was like, "Oh, shit, like, I can't wait to go live with her." And something
Mhm.
else that actually hit me while, I was editing her episode, to piggyback off of what you were just saying, is even though we go in with a good intent, even though we go in with sharing survivor stories who we don't know how much of it they've processed, how much of it they've, truly changed and developed and gotten out into a better
Right.
place, we kind of just have to take their word for it. And I'm not worried about the guest in most cases as much as I am the listeners. But when we say something to them that's going to trigger them or that's going to, sometimes people get comfortable in an uncomfortable feeling and where their life has been chaos for so long. And maybe they're starting to realize that they come across our show, right? Or your show. And we start they start listening, but some of the things that we say, they're gonna be jabs to them, and they're gonna almost want to their first reaction is going to be to defend their world, even when their world is fucking chaos, because change
Mhm.
is scary, and we don't want to fully admit the kind of world that we live in some cases like this, and so I think it really opened our eyes to the healing process and open our eyes to you can't put like I would never say healed, right? Like I'm still healing,
Yeah.
and so I don't know. I just think that because of what we do, especially when religion is involved,
Mhm.
we're opening ourselves up. And I don't. I mean, I think that we knew that going in. I don't think we realized the extent of
Mhm.
it. And boy, did we learn.
It's really crazy, isn't
Yeah.
it? I know, but I thank God for you, and I thank God for my husband, and it's like I wouldn't have been able to get through it without you and Ryan, honestly. I don't think I've ever cried so hard in my life as the night that I found out that police report was made and I got a copy of it and I read it and I was not only devastated because I had trusted this person, she was my co-host, and but just also how could somebody hate me that bad? Like I didn't do anything to you. And it made me really, really sad. And I just don't know that level. I really don't.
And you
So,
and I had even talked how like if she should have been mad at anyone, it should have been me when there really wasn't a reason to be mad and nothing like this reaction is not justified by any means, but why didn't she come for me the way that she did you? And is it because I knew her longer, meaning I know more or I have more. 'Cause I guess she did all that she could to me, like because she did go in and she changed all the passwords and was holding things hostage and was trying to, like, blackmail me into, "I will expose all this stuff," when there's no I'm an open book. There's nothing to
mhm.
expose.
And
But
that's the thing that I don't think people understand. There was blackmail involved, there was
yeah,
threats made,
yeah,
there was a all kinds of stuff that
yeah.
we didn't really even, like, go into, but it's been wild. It's been wild, and so I'm just gonna because we could sit here for hours and talk about every little story. I just wanna, like, go through a couple other things, like a bullet point. Okay, so there've been, obviously, I said the police report. There's been crackheads, there's been scammers and con artists, there's been TikTok drama, there's been secret listeners and haters. Some of the things that I find really funny is some of the comments on the episodes that I've done. I've been called a nut job. I've been said, this isn't your thing. Maybe you should try OnlyFans. I've been called a witch. I've been told, stop playing a victim. Everything that you said to you wasn't really that bad. I've been gaslit. All of this within the last year. And we moved across the country. It's been a lot. It's been a lot. But yeah, it's been a lot, but okay. Enough of the crazy drama negative. Let's talk about the positives because we ended on a very high note, a solid note. I feel like the podcast is going in a really wonderful, positive direction. I'm I feel like I'm getting a little bit out of this little circle that I was in where I was only interviewing people that were somehow associated with like the independent fundamental Baptist. And
Yeah.
I think that, naturally people are drawn to me because I was the pastor's daughter within that cult. So they were like, oh, I should tell my story and she would relate to me. And it's not that I don't want anybody from the IFB at
No.
this point. I think that now what I'm super grateful for is that I have met people outside of that at this point that have also given me connections to other people who have different experiences and maybe not even in a cult or in a religion per se, but like a different perspective about something about life, about spirits, about
Yeah.
whatever. And so it's really made me grateful for where I'm at now with the podcast, where my family is in our location. I feel just so grateful that my husband has stuck with me through all of it because truth be told, he wanted me to quit. He was like, you have to quit this podcast. Like, it's not worth it. And he knows how important the podcast is to me because I feel like this is like a mission that I'm on, that I am giving people a place to tell their story. And you gave me a place to tell my story. And I want to give that to other people. And I think it's so important. And I feel like growing up, I didn't have a voice, especially as a female in the church. Like,
Yeah.
we're told you don't get to have a say, you don't get to talk, you don't get to give your opinion about stuff. And if you are, you're considered a Jezebel, and which I've talked about before. And this podcast obviously gives me the opportunity to have a voice and to give other people a voice as well. So that's very important to me at this stage in my life. And I don't know, I think just the opportunities that I'm seeing now and the new friendships that I've made. Obviously, I don't think I would have met you if not for the podcasting world. And, you're a very special person in my life now. And
Probably the best.
I consider you the top
Okay.
tier besties that I got.
I was gonna say to the listener, if you've listened to any previous episodes, you understand why she's picking her words wisely right now.
Yeah. And also, it's not like one of those things like where David and I just have been virtual friends. Like, we have actually met. It's
Yeah.
it's not like we're just besties on Zoom or TikTok. It's been quite a ride. It's been quite a ride, and I am excited for whatever is next. And I don't know. I don't know. Do you have anything else to say?
Yes, I do. I have a couple of
Okay.
things that I would like to mention to celebrate
Okay.
with you and praise you with. You said something I think is very important. How when I first started my podcast, I thought it was going to be females that I talked with or gay people. I honestly thought it was going to be mostly gay people, like hate crime related, gay hate stuff.
Yeah.
And boy, was I wrong. I have just as many men as I do women, and I have less gay people than I do straight people. You know what I mean? But it broadened me and it broadened my circle. And so I feel like that's what you were saying when you came into it, you thought, oh, I'll probably be doing a lot of IFB, and then you're finding these people that are in other cults. But I bet you, and I can't speak for you, but I've read some of the comments. We've been live with some of the people where one person that we're live with will mention a person's episode that they listened to, and they were not in the same cult, but they were still validating to them because it's
Mhm.
still the same kind of shit. It's
Yeah.
still not being heard. It's still, and so you don't have to be in the same cult and in the same hate crime or the same demographic to be seen and heard and to validate someone and to cheer someone on. And I think that's what your platform does. Half the time when we go live with someone, I don't know what cult they were associated with because it doesn't matter.
Mhm.
That's the part that doesn't matter. And I think that's what's so important. That's what your platform does. I am so thankful that Because I remember a tough phone call I had to have with you when all of this was first starting with Susie, and and I had to ask you like, is does Ryan hate me? Does Ryan want you to be away from me? And if you do decide to stop the podcast, does that mean that we're not friends? And that was a very hard conversation for me. And we got through that.
We did.
And you were thriving. And I hate that, honey, next time, if you want a podcast by yourself, just tell me. We don't have to go this long ass way for it. Just tell me, girl. We don't got to do all this. Just for you to have your own podcast, my love.
And you know what, David? That is something that I definitely need to work on because that really is part of the upbringing that I was
Yeah,
raised in. Like, if you're offered something, you don't say, well, what about this or what
right.
about that? You just take it and be grateful.
Well, and I want to make sure that we understand that the listeners understand, because I know that in some of our verbiage, it almost sounds as if I own Unholier, and I do not.
Right.
Unholier is yours. I was never an owner of it. I help in the background. I, will pop in and do some lives with you. I will pop in and be a guest on your show. So with me offering something. It wasn't that I was necessarily offering, it was that I was suggesting like, "Hey, we could do this. I've got the equipment to do it, but it's yours." So I don't want it to ever sound as if this is mine and you work for me. Honey, if anything, I work for you, boo.
Oh my gosh.
Like this, because I think it's so important to say that this is your baby.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, your baby was born with some hiccups. But honey, that baby is up and fucking walking. Your numbers are great. You're getting contacted. Like in the beginning, I remember we were like, okay, who can we reach out to? Who can we get? And now it's like people keep emailing us and they're like, can I be on the
Mm.
show? Can I be on the show? Can I be on the show? And we're like, yes, but we're booked out for 2 months, and that's because we're doing something good. You're doing something good. I believe in you. I know that you had a harder end of the stick when it come to the Susie thing than I did, and I don't want to minimize that by any means, or minimize what I went through, but I do not want to try to act like what I went through touches what you went through, and the fact that you kept your head up and that you were not gonna let this take you away from your voice or giving other people a voice shows how powerful and headstrong you are, and I just really admire that about you.
Aw, thank you, friend. Thanks for doing this episode with me.
Yeah, it was fun,
It
and,
was fun.
I just wanna say thank you, best friend.
You definitely are my bestest gay friend that I've ever had.
I'll take it.
Okay.
Thank you for having me on. I'm so glad we did this together, and may I say, and if you don't love it, that's okay, but may I say this is to a hellacious year.
Hellacious. I don't know if I want hellacious.
Well, I mean, honey, you have been through the fucking ringer, but
Oh, you're saying 2025. You're not
y
saying cheers to
I
the
no, I'm
next.
saying that this is to the first year of
Oh,
your
okay.
of your
Yeah.
podcast, and
Okay.
there was a lot of highs,
Yes.
but damn it, those lows, and
Yes.
you did it, and,
Good.
we made a promise to each other that we were going to let 2025 weed out the bad, so we can go into 2026, and, honey, and I'm not good with resolutions, but we fucking kept this one. I don't know where Ryan is with eating chips, but you and I, we've nailed this one.
He
So
almost slipped up with the chips yesterday, but he stayed strong. He's still going strong.
so I just wanna say congratulations on a tough year, but an amazing fucking year, and I'm proud of you, and I can't wait to see what year number 2 brings for you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Love you, friend.
I love you.
Cheers. Thank you for being here today and for the honesty, the mess, the healing, and the growth. 1 year of the Unholier Than Thou podcast has taught me that not every chapter ends cleanly, but that doesn't mean the story is over. This year has stretched me, humbled me, broke me open in places, and also brought incredible new connections, creativity, and clarity. I'm walking into the next year of this podcast stronger, more grounded, and more excited than ever about what is ahead. To everyone who has supported this show, shared it, listened quietly, and cheered me on from afar, I want to thank you. You are a huge part of why this podcast still exists. Here's to the lessons, the friendships that stayed, the doors that opened, and the ones that closed for good reasons. And as always, stay curious, stay unholy, and don't be afraid to outgrow what no longer fits. Thank you for listening. Before we close out, I just want to share a quick reminder. The stories told on this podcast are personal experiences and perspectives. They're shared to create awareness and connection, not as medical, legal, or mental health advice. Some of the conversations here focus on abuse, trauma, and other heavy topics, so please take care of yourself while listening. It's always okay to pause, skip an episode, or step away if you need to. And if anything we talked about brings something up to you, we encourage you to reach out to a trusted professional or a support resource. You don't have to carry any of this alone. Thank you for listening.